Talked about Eastern North America. We've started to talk about the middle of North America. Now let's move on to the western part of North America during the Mesozoic. And what's happening in the western part of North America is actually caused by what's happening on the East Coast. That's what we talked about at first. So as the East Coast is experiencing divergence and seafloor spreading, that divergence is pushing North America into the Pacific Plate, causing the western part of North America to collide with the Pacific Plate, creating convergence and mountain building. So during the Mesozoic, a subduction zone was active along North America's western margin, the same as it is today. We still see this convergence in this subduction zone. And the Pacific Plate wasn't just carrying with it ocean floor and seafloor sediments. It was also carrying with it a lot of volcanic islands and fragments of distant continents. And when those large land bodies ran into Western North America, they attached to North America rather than be subducted. So if you look at the Cordilleran mountain belt, the mountain belt on the West Coast, it's made up of almost 70% exotic terrains, meaning land that was created elsewhere, maybe as an island in the ocean or as another piece of a continent elsewhere. And then because of convergence, accreted onto our continent. So when it accretes onto our continent, we call it abduction, right? So exotic terrains, because they're low density, they have a density very similar to continental density, which is lower than seafloor, a lower density than seafloor. That's why it sits on top of the seafloor. When they run into the eastern part of North America, rather than being subducted, they were kind of scraped off and pushed up over the west coast of North America. So whereas subduction, the material sinks down into the mantle, abduction, that material is scraped off and lifted up over the landmass. Okay. And we call this accretionary tectonics, right? When the growth of a continent is caused by progressive incorporation of exotic terrains, that's accretionary tectonics. So if we look at a map of Western North America during the early Mesozoic, we see that there are a lot of exotic terrains being added onto our West Coast, slowly building up the Cordilleran orogeny, the Cordilleran orogenic belt, until eventually we get that huge belt of mountains.